our final thoughts, our final predictions for Week 12 of the college football season. This last segment, we just talked a lot about Jayden Daniels and his prospects to potentially winning a Heisman Trophy and making a push for that. If I'm Brian Kelly and I'm Mike Denbrock, I think you let Jayden Daniels cook as long as possible against Georgia State. For the reasons we just said. They're not going to get that extra data point in the SEC title game, whereas Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr. all could have a chance to still play in their conference title game and have a chance to take the Heisman Trophy. But it's not just because you want Jayden Daniels to win it because you like Jayden Daniels. It's not just a thing where, like, hey, we love what he's done for this team so far, and he's earned the right to play for it. Like, that's absolutely true, too. If that isn't baked into it, I think you're looking at it the wrong way. But let's just take that part out of it. Let's take the personal equation out of it for Jayden Daniels. Even from a selfish perspective, if I'm Brian Kelly, it is in your best interest long-term at LSU for Jayden Daniels to win the Heisman Trophy, to leave him in there and put up numbers against Georgia State. Because now the optics around LSU, I think, would change in a rather drastic way, rather positively. Because then you have not one, but two Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks coming from your school in the modern college football era, Joe Burrow and then Jayden Daniels. Also, look at Jayden Daniels where he was previously last season, where they're throwing for like 85 yards in one game. And then the step he's taken, the rather 3 or 4 steps he's taken to being the best quarterback in the country right now at LSU. Speaks to the development, speaks to Mike Denbrock and his offense and the way that they have propelled his game since he got there from Arizona State. I think you stamp a Heisman Trophy on top of all of that. That's a pretty nice recruiting tool. If I'm a 4 or 5 star quarterback somewhere in the country watching LSU, I might consider going to Baton Rouge a little bit more seriously if I see what Jayden Daniels has done and it has the validity of a Heisman Trophy on top of all of it. Like, you can look at numbers, you can look at highlight tape and all that, but tell you what, man, Heisman trophies, not much more to say if you're holding one of those on a recruiting visit and taking a picture with it. So I think that could probably boost LSU forward in terms of recruiting signal callers going forward. So my final thought there, let Jayden Daniels cook. Let him cook. I mean, leave him in as long as possible. Let him put up 6 touchdowns. Let him go crazy and have a road to glory kind of day against Georgia State. Now, Michigan. Talked about him a little bit earlier in this live show as well. Curious case against Maryland. Letdown spot after Penn State. Look ahead spot to Ohio State. Maryland on the road. You know, maybe it's feisty. Who knows what happens with Jim Harbaugh? My thought here is I think we just see Michigan double down on who they are yet again. Like, I think they want to limit the possessions for Taulia Tagovailoa, but like, as the old poem goes by Maya Angelou, when someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time. Michigan told us who they were last weekend. They had some trouble running the football at some point early in the game against Penn State. Oh, are they going to start throwing the football? No, they're just going to add more big bodies to that formation. They're going to get downhill, and they're going to make you say uncle. They did that against Penn State. I think right now they're going to do that again against Maryland. And so, one, they're going to do that is what I want to make sure we say. I think they, once again, play bully ball up front. The second thing I want to say is there's going to be a lot of takes now coming out again from the digital media space saying, well, J.J. McCarthy, I guess, can he be the guy to get them to a national championship? Is he really that good? They don't trust him to throw the football downfield. Don't listen to those. That's not true. You got people crafting a narrative around a stat line without actually watching the game. Last weekend, we heard the same thing. J.J. McCarthy, man, he's not a great thrower of the football. Really? Had 1 incompletion, went 7 for 8. Did some things with his legs to propel that offense forward. It's not about J.J. McCarthy. It's about this team. And J.J. McCarthy, to take it a step further, he understands it's about this team. J.J. McCarthy was juiced after they beat Penn State. There was no pouting, even though they probably just torpedoed his Heisman Trophy chances. He's about this team. So Jayden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy and the numbers that he puts up is not important to him, and it's not more important than winning to him. So Michigan, once again, will play bully ball because of this situation, because it's who they are, first. Second, because there's a lot of weird going on around this whole situation. And when things get weird, you lean into what's stable, what's certain. And what's certain for Michigan is those big bodies up front, those running backs in the backfield, taking over those linebackers against Maryland, I'm sure. And that'll be a lot of fun to watch. So expect that from Michigan. Let's guard against the J.J. McCarthy and all that good kind of takes, because you're going to hear them a lot, I promise you. Georgia now. Big game against Tennessee, at Tennessee. I think we leave this Saturday saying, hey, Carson Beck, he is very firmly in that Heisman conversation. We just talked about the Heisman Trophy a second ago with Penix Jr. and Marvin Harrison Jr. A lot of juniors in this year's Heisman Trophy race. Bo Nix, Jayden Daniels, Carson Beck, I think, will enter that chat a little bit more firmly after this weekend because we talk about stages and we talk about having momentum. I think he's built some momentum over the last couple of weeks with the game against Missouri and the game against Ole Miss. This game against Tennessee, once again, national stage. It is the game in that 3:30 Eastern slot. You got a ranked Tennessee team. You're on the road. If he goes out there and puts up numbers yet again, like he's done all season long, I think you'll see him in that top 3 category for the Heisman Trophy. I really do, because when it comes to what the Heisman is, yes, he's the best player in the country, but it's also the best player on the best team. That's why Jayden Daniels is getting so much pushback right now, and we don't agree with it. But even so, the way that Carson Beck's playing right now, he's put himself in position to capitalize on all his momentum. Like it's not the most flashy. It's not Pat Mahomes running right, throwing left, no look passes. It's not going to be a bunch of SportsCenter top 10 plays. But look at that stat line. Dude's throwing over 300 yards a game. Just delivers every single time. He's not the most flashy, like I said. Like if you have an issue with Carson Beck, it's from the boring side of things. But usually greatness can be kind of boring. It's true. We talk about Alabama those last couple of years when they were reeling off national championships. A.J. McCarron's playing quarterback. Jacob Coker's playing quarterback. It's not always flash that ends up being the thing that produces greatness. Usually it's substance. And Carson Beck, whole lot of substance. He'll deliver again this weekend. He'll be in that Heisman Trophy conversation again. Does he win it? I don't know if they have enough, like I said, flash, to be honest, but he should be in that conversation, and he will be in it after this weekend. Final thought here for Week 12. I think we find out if Texas is actually a playoff team this weekend. And I'm not talking about scenarios. I'm not talking about if they win this game, they're going to be in the college football playoff. They could win this game and still leave some questions about, do they have what it takes to line up in that top 4? Because the thing about playoff teams and the teams that we know are going to be playoff teams, like they don't play with their food in November. In November, you don't limp through that month and then find your way into the college football playoff and then you're in good shape. And I'm not talking about losing your conference title game. TCU lost the conference title game a season ago and still found their way into the college football playoff. But I don't think Texas is striving to be what TCU was last year. That's no shade to TCU, but going back to this point with Texas, this is a very tricky situation, going to a tough place to play. They've tread water the last couple of weeks, some of it without Quinn Ewers. This last game against TCU was with Quinn Ewers. There has to be the kick here now, this last week. This has to be the game where you say, you know what? Last couple of weeks wasn't us. We found a way to get it done. It was gritty, it was grimy, and we found a way to win football games. But right now on the road, in our most vulnerable spot in terms of like the tough spot that it is to play against Iowa State at night, we put our foot down, we handle business, full throttle forward. If they go in there and just blow out Iowa State, it helps check that eye test box a little bit as well for the committee. But I think as a whole, it would just tell me a lot about, okay, hey, under the hood, this Texas team has got it. At times, have they left more to be desired? Sure. But this Texas team has got it. So I think we find out a lot about where they are internally. Not that the culture is the problem, not that the culture is not still rock solid at Texas, but it is a little bit about, okay, do we have